It's Divas That Care Radio. Stories, strategies, and ideas to inspire positive change. Welcome to Divas That Care, a network of women committed to making our world a better place for everyone. This is a global movement for women, by women, engaged in a collaborative effort to create a better world for future generations. To find out more about the movement, visit divasthatcare.com after the show. Right now, though, stay tuned for another jolt of inspiration.
Namaste and welcome to the Divas That Care Network. I'm your host, Gia-Raquel Rose, owner of Airs Above Yoga, and you are listening to Above the Ground podcast. If this is your first time tuning in, our network is going into its 15th year and is listened to in over 30 countries. So I'd like to personally thank you for giving me the gift of your time, and it's my honor, as always, to hold space with you. And today I am super, super excited. We have an amazing diva and woman on with a whole host of wonderful things that she does, but we're going to talk a little bit about her experience with yoga today. And so with that, I'd like to welcome Ann Scheerer to Above the Ground podcast. And thank you so much for joining me today. And would you like to give yourself a little introduction about yoga and your practice and what brings you joy?
Yeah, thank you, Gia, for inviting me here. I love the whole Divas That Care network. I'm glad you introduced it to me. So thank you. It's an honor that you asked me to be here. Yeah, I've really gotten intimate with yoga, I would say during menopause for me in my mid-50s, which is now about 6 years ago. It was in the coming into the pandemic, and my body was on fire, hot flashes, hormonal imbalances. And I was taking some yoga classes in Portland, Oregon, and my teacher there had a yin class. And I said, asked her what this was about. She said, well, it's really great for cooling down the body if you really have frantic energy working in, which we all do in the lifestyles that many of us lead. Yin is a really great cooling practice, and having this kind of premenopausal symptoms happening, I started to attend her classes and really enjoyed the permission of being able to be in long, extenuated poses to kind of slow down, and having that permission to have yoga be that way for me was really refreshing. But it is a complement, as we'll talk later, to yang. So I don't think it's always beneficial maybe for people to go 100% yin. But through that period of my life, I really wanted to kind of get more in touch with my body and kind of think about this term embodied wisdom.
I love that.
I've been so much in my head throughout my adult life and my career. And so just even learning what it means to be in my body, it took me some years to kind of really, and I'm still working on it, right? So the yin really helped me to, slow down and do in meditation within the yin to help me kind of like really explore more deeply my body and organs and meridians and things. So that's how I really got to yin, and then combining some of my, meditation. I had really got into meditation prior to deepening in my yoga, but that really helped deepen my meditation practice as well. So I continue to do yin practice daily, but I do mix it with more yang energetic type of poses, which we can get into a little bit more specifics. But this is basically how I got to becoming a fan of yin yoga once I learned about it.
And so, obviously I usually say that with most different types of practice, it kind of all starts with hatha, right? Like if you have a basic idea of the postures, then you need, and that's what you were mentioning, and I don't want to assume, but you were mentioning how, you kind of need both to have balance. So to be able to practice yin and hold these postures. So essentially yin yoga is and I won't make it as dumbed down, quote, air quotes for those people that are listening online and not seeing this. But essentially they're very long holds, correct, for a lot of the postures. And it really gives you the sense to be able to drop in, not only, as you said, to your body from your mind, right? Which is what we're always trying to do in yoga, but also to be able to really explore your body in the pose, which if you're practicing like me type A vinyasa girl, if you're practicing those, you get the benefit of the transition on like the joints and the physicality. You don't get that in vinyasa. It's very rare for you to really do a long hold in a vinyasa class. I will say almost never.
Yeah, yeah. And that totally relates to this. Yeah. And I think that kind of going back with, yin and yang or yang, coming back to the Taoist philosophy, which I'm no expert in by any means, but it stems from our chi. And I think in hatha yoga, any type of yoga, physical yoga asanas that we're doing are really trying to balance the chi. But a lot of the active poses we do in flow are maybe more the yang type of poses, just like you said. So this is my teacher, actually, Sarah Powers, wrote a book called Insight Yoga, and she's an amazing yogi and teacher, and so she has a great book about that, explains kind of how Yin Yoga is there to deal with the yin elements of our bodies even. So yin elements of our body are blood, the liver, the kidneys. And so those don't get a lot of movement and energy flow necessarily with faster yang practices. So yin can help kind of move some of the meridians through, and you really focus more on, instead of in yang, for example, would be yang is more external, whereas yin is more internal. So yang, you put your energies out there in very energetic warrior poses and flow movements and continue. Whereas the yin then allows you to go more internal. I said it helped me with my meditation. So kind of going more internal and kind of like, being one with those joints. That's another thing with aging. It's been very helpful. And so you're really working, instead of kind of working on your muscle, building your muscle tension and that kind of thing, you're going more like trying to get the ligaments and the bones juiced up. So you do that in a kind of a slower way, and the poses themselves are similar to the yang poses, but you just hold them longer. So one of my favorites, and that was recommended to me by my teacher, was the butterfly pose, where it's opening up with your legs kind of splayed and your feet together. You're opening up like a butterfly, very, very kind of honoring the feminine body as well. And then, leaning forward and just holding the butterfly pose. Usually I put a prop, a bolster under my head, a little yoga block as I'm leaning forward towards my feet. But just staying in that position for a good 5 minutes in the morning resets everything for me. And the whole idea that, if anybody's interested, I recommend go to an expert that really knows a lot about the meridians, but these different poses do kind of help with organ health. And some of those, female organs that, for example, going through menopause, really felt relief in my gut from doing these slower poses and really holding them, and then just kind of like being in that moment with what's happening in my gut, like, oh, my body is changing right now, my female functions are shifting and shutting down, and just really kind of getting into like being grateful for that, being a female, it's just so empowering to kind of go deeper that way, because I probably live a pretty yang existence,
don't we all
out in the world. Yeah, right.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, we are in a very sun, male, right hemisphere, outward, external, that's where we are, especially I think, in this country, in the US where we are. I think there's a lot of that.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. it helps in that way as well for me to deal with the world, there's just so much that we can grieve about, and I teach, environmental science and sustainability courses, and there's a lot of climate grief out there, and dealing with these topics that aren't so positive every day, kind of wears down your psyche sometimes. So, I think these practices help with kind of even grieving, like allow your body to grieve, or just whatever is fine, but allow yourself to kind of let those things flow through. And so I think the yin practice and the classes that I have taken have really helped me to go a little deeper there and help me to, feel a little bit more sane in this crazy world.
And I think, you mentioned like shutting down, you're talking about like grieving, and the word that keeps coming to my mind is release, right? And so when you hold like yin posture, like butterfly, that is anytime you hold a pose in my mind for more than like 10 breaths. Like if I'm teaching, it's like, you know that if a student is not necessarily, if it's a true student, maybe someone who's new to yoga, keeping them in anything for more than 10 breaths is going to be a challenge, right? To someone who's not used to it. So I'm always of the mindset that you kind of have to keep people moving to kind of keep them engaged, especially if they are new to a yoga practice. But I think that you don't get that release unless you hold a posture for a very long time. And your body, I've talked about this a lot, especially over the holidays, the amount of emotion and grief is one of the prime ones in the hips for women, lower back, hips. It's where we store not only, I won't even say tension, because I think a lot of times tension for women, stress is up here, and it's up in the shoulders, and it's up in the neck, and it's up in this kind of place. And if you don't actively process that through, your body hangs on to it and it stores it right here. But grief specifically, I believe, and I don't want to misspeak, but I believe in more Eastern medicine, grief is associated with the lungs. And there's an element of the lungs being the organ that actually stores and processes and holds on to grief. But I think for let's say our actual body, when it comes to not just organs, but in our skeletal structure, I think it's hips. For me as a woman, as for women, I've had classes where you have a woman in pigeon and maybe we held it for a little bit longer and then they start to cry. And I think that we store trauma, grief, any emotion related to our femininity, our sexual organ, all of that is stored in our sacral and root and lower chakras. And any of these poses, they offer a release, and you might not even know what it is you're crying about or what it is you're releasing. But have you noticed that? Maybe not for yourself personally, I don't want you to have to overshare, but like maybe in a class or when you were doing your teacher training, was there anything that came through? Because my teacher training was highly emotional. I did too. And both of them were a lot in a wonderful way, but it was a lot.
Oh yeah. That actually is, I think, a main benefit, but is spot on. In the yin poses, they're all on the floor. And that's another thing about the yin and the yang. Yin poses are more floor based. You're grounded, you're soft. Yang poses are more standing based. Yep. But just being on the floor, in your pose, come to your edge, come to the edge of where it's comfortable and not comfortable. And that's different for everyone. So when you're in that pose, your edge might be at some point, but then, typically the prompts are just soften. Oh my gosh. So it's amazing how you can just soften and soften a little more and soften a little more. And so that's kind of become my mantra just in being in the world too,
Soften.
But that was a key thing, but that's kind of what we're trying to do. And I think that I have found in the hip openers, yes, right on. That is something I was after when I first was going through menopause. I could not release my hips enough, there's just so much tension there. So that softening and that getting deeper, it does release emotions. Mm-hmm. And surprisingly, but then kind of allowing yourself to go there. And I think it's more, in a group practice, I found that they were kind of evoked a little bit more when the teacher was prompting certain things. but I think that I feel more connected to, maybe how my emotions are showing up in my body now,
Yeah.
that connection,
Yeah.
but
It's like a
continuing to
practice.
figure that out.
Yeah,
Right,
and it's a
right. It's
practice, right?
never
Like
done.
the more you tap into it, the more you start. It's like, it's like opening up a present. Right? Like the more that you start to pull at that thread, the more you get into that box, the more you open up, the more things come out. And it's beautiful, but it's that kind of like not knowing what's in there, that anticipation can be, a little bit fearful, right? Like because it's like it's a surprise. It belongs to you, right? Like it was gifted to you, whatever this experience is with inside you, and it's yours, and but you don't know what you stuffed in that box however
Right.
many years ago, right? So as soon as you start to open it up, it's like Pandora at that point, and you kind of it can, and I think that can maybe speak a little bit to the edge that you were talking about. Like that's the edge, that fear, that apprehension, that maybe a little bit of discomfort. That is the edge that you just kind of have to gently pull that ribbon open and let one of those flaps come up. And I think maybe the softer you pull, right? I'm on big on metaphors clearly, but the softer you pull at that ribbon and let it to just kind of open naturally. I love soften. I love that. I just think it's we are so hard. Again, air quotes for those of you that aren't watching this, but we are so in such a hard society, such a hard driven life, that softening is just it should be the mantra for 2025. Soften into 2025.
Right, right. And it's just, divas that care. This world needs more divas that care. And I
Yes.
think, if there's any movement that's most important is women and female empowerment, because for me it's been disheartening to see how this is being, we're being degraded in many, ways in the political scene anyway, but women are powerful, and so I think that only more of these kind of practices. It's okay to soften. The world needs more of this. It makes me, hopeful too that people like you are doing these things and communicating with other women, and that's we need lots of tools in our toolbox to soften and to put ourselves out there and to blossom.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, this is one that I found really, really helpful.
And I
You're
love
so
that. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I love that, we figured this out, but I hadn't realized until today that it's the Lunar New Year. So last night was
That's
the new
right.
moon, right? And the new moon is all, so just to go into my little woo woo, left side yoga teacher, new moons are all about manifestation. They're all about the feminine. They're all about the cooling, right? The moon is the in yoga, right? The moon is the left hemisphere, the feminine side, right? And the cooling side, like for yin and for, all of the energy. Whereas the right side is the heating, it's the sun salutes, it's the vinyasa, it's the male dominated side. And that's how, in a very basic way, yoga kind of breaks down the left and right hemispheres of the body. But it's also about union and balance of the two. And I am such a big proponent of like divine feminine practices and cultivating that within yourself, because I could not believe this more, and I will shout it from the rooftops any chance that I get. I believe in, be the change that you want to see. And I always say, like, I kind of think, if you think about like the picture of the globe at night and you see like lights in cities, I always try to come up with that imagery and be like, if all of us lit up our own lights and were exactly who and what we embody, aspire to be, our own lights, our own love, our own softening as women, as people, and we all did that all over the world, we would have such an impact. And you don't have to be all over the world to do it. You can do it right where you are. And that is your little space. You're put right where you are on this planet to be your space, to be your light, to shine as brightly as you can, to be a beacon of love and hope in, darkness with your business and, what your 9 to 5 day job has been. And, it's Mother Earth that we live on, right? That divine feminine. And she is going through her whole process. We have not been very kind to her, right? And so you are on the front lines of that in so many ways. And so even just tapping into your own yin yoga practice, setting yourself up as a woman to receive. How, like, I'm horrible at receiving. I I am just the worst at receiving. And I know it's like that's my practice. I need to learn how to receive better so much. But for you to be able to each morning allow your hips to release, soften yourself for your day, that to me, that is you coming into your divine feminine and being your divine feminine as you move through your day, and that positive internal awareness, that influence, you're bringing that to all the people that you interact with on a daily basis. And I think if we all did that, if we all trusted ourselves to be as powerful as we are, how much better would this existence be? How much more could we lift, our slightly damaged Mother Earth up out of her, grief, circling back,
Mm-hmm. Yes, that is powerful, and I love it because the fact that first of all it's a new moon and we're talking yin, which is yes, definitely a softer kind of moon practices, but also that really love and positivity is more powerful than hate. And so, how can we get that out there in our networks? The point I was initially wanting to make was that, can you imagine, going along with what you just said, if everybody, meditated and weren't allowed to, every morning from home, and weren't allowed to commute or deal with the daily grind, how much peace there would be on this planet just for like the morning rush hour, and people start their day in a more peaceful place instead of many times. I know for years I was in the rat race and stressed the minute I had to wake up at 5:30 a.m. to dealing with the full day. So yeah, I love that image, and definitely advocacy. I'm an advocate for slowing down, softening, slowing down. Maybe it's my phase of life too, but
Well, and I also think it goes back to what you're saying, that you came into your yin practice at the beginning, like during COVID, correct? Like you started, that was when you did your instructor training. And, and correct me because you know the answer to this much more than I do, but correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't there just a little bit of healing that occurred on the planet during COVID when we were truly in lockdown? Wasn't there a little bit, didn't we see some environmental manifestations of positivity from human beings being locked up and not being able to drive everywhere and destroy our planet as we moved through our unconscious daily practices?
Yeah, that's true. The carbon emissions did take a dip, if you look at global carbon emissions at that time, for sure. Then on the other hand, a lot of people were like sitting at home and ordering stuff, so consumerism went up maybe a little.
You can't win them all, right?
I know, there's trade-offs. But, I think I love the pandemic for many reasons, actually, because it gave me a chance to work from home. And I'm like, thank you, universe. I'm working from home. I don't have to go out there. And even though I was still working and my job shifted, and but it also allowed that to be more of a possibility, I think, in the world. And it gave me space to pursue the yoga teacher training and some of these practices we're talking about. So, I was hoping post-pandemic world would be a little less chaotic than it is, but there's still hope. So continue to practice. That's all we can do.
There's always hope, right? There's always hope. And, you just have to, sometimes you have to create it for yourself, right? Like sometimes you can get, lost in all the things that are going on in the world. But I always find that your center, right, your yoga practice, whatever it might be, is for you, where you come back to. And that's, goes back to that, like that light within that you cultivate by doing practices like yoga, by treating your body kindly, by treating, by, like you said, if everyone meditated in the morning, right? If we talked about, meditation practices, stilling practices, recalibration practice. That's what all of this is, right? Yoga, no matter what no matter what it is, it's about balance and recalibration. And I think that you need time and space to give that to yourself. And I think that's where people go wrong. And I don't want to say wrong, but where they don't have or they don't give themselves, they don't create the time and the space to stop, to be still. And a lot of times I think that can be trauma, because as soon as you're still, if you still and there's anything in your life that you're avoiding, it's the first thing that comes flooding in.
Yeah, you are so right. I think that I'm a pro at repressing emotions, and so yeah, I think that is what we do. And slowing down, sometimes when you just have a day of nothing and total solitude, my mind can make myself, I'm tired of hearing my, self saying the self-talk. So, it is to give sometimes scary to give yourself space and time, or find other things to do before I got yoga on my list today, but I'll get this, and this done. And then I can do that I do this, and this, and the day's done. And,
exactly.
So I think digging into doing the yoga teacher training especially got me, to understand really the importance of, that's the number one priority before everything else. It makes everything else go better in the day, kind of that click, like,
yeah,
okay, I'll get up and then it's like not so bad to start a day, oh, I get to relish in some soft self-love practices for an hour. Maybe it's 45 minutes some days, maybe it's 15. But once you sit down, once I just roll my mat out on the floor, I kind of soften,
yeah.
And then, so then it's like, there it is. And it's very inviting because I know, how valuable and how worthwhile it is to be on the mat. So just throwing the mat down gets me into the practice. And I think starting my day with a little meditation, a little yoga, depending on how much time I have, has changed a lot of things for me. Yeah.
And I think that always the challenge is coming to your mat. The challenge is rolling the mat out. It is making that choice and consistency, right? Like, you can do it and then you can stop it for like a couple days and then you lose it for like a month. You know what I mean? Like if you're not consistent, and it really is it's not about how long you're on your mat. It's not about whether you meditate and do asana, whether it's about the act of the purpose of again, gifting yourself that time, creating that time, and making the choice to roll the mat out and just get on it. No matter what you do, get on it. That's your yoga practice. Breathing. Just there were mornings where I was like, I'm doing something and I have 10 minutes. I ran out of time. Like I have X, Y, and Z. I'm going to just do breath work. I'm going to breathe, and that still counts. That's still yoga. And to that end, because again, I'm vinyasa girl all the way, or had been for many, many years until I, vinyasa'd my shoulder into some unhappy places. But how does the breath tie into the yin? Because I'm sure if you have to hold a posture for upwards of 3 minutes, 5 minutes, that the breath really plays a huge, huge role in that. It has to. How could you can't really soften if you can't breathe, right?
Yeah, thank you. For bringing that up, because it is a huge part of any yoga pose, as you know, but very important for yin poses. And really for me, I keep my breathing practices fairly easy, my pranayama, to, kind of doing 5 deep belly breaths at least, to kind of get me in tune with where I'm going to find my edge. But I think starting, if I'm in my, going into my butterfly pose, I look at, once I get into the pose, I look at that, really use my breath to visualize how it's kind of entering through my throat, into my stomach, into my organs, and just kind of visualizing a cleansing kind of that flow of breath in and out. And also the cleansing visual, first of all, is very, helps me to just relax and remember why I'm here, because I love the image of cleaning things out. But also getting into deeper and deeper into the pose with, it's amazing how when you're in tune with your breath, how it can just take you a little deeper each time, softening the breath is just the softener, right? Yeah. You breathe in and it helps you to really concentrate. And one quote that comes up a lot is prana flows where your how does that go? Energy flows where your prana goes. So your prana being your breath, if you're kind of, when I'm breathing and I'm really thinking about, my cleansing my kidneys, and so I'm breathing and focusing my breath just by that energetic focusing into certain organs or certain joints, ligaments that are tight. It's amazing how that breath just helps you to let yourself soften. And so breath is huge to get deeper into the practice. Yeah. Especially, the recommended time for a yin pose would be anywhere from 1 to 5 minutes. For those of us that haven't been doing it for a really long time, 1 to 3 minutes. 3 minutes might be about the point where people get a little twitchy and it's like, oh, okay, I've beyond my edge now. I can bring it back or something. But 5 minutes is recommended for each pose if you can hold one up to 5 minutes. But that shows that, you have kind of calmed and down your nervous system a little bit. It's a little bit of a sign of that too. It's hard to do. My mind wants me to move after 1.5,
Of course.
So it is a practice to kind of stick with it for, beyond the 2-minute point.
Yeah. And when you were talking about, and I always say, whenever I cue, I always wind up cueing, okay, so we're going to we breathe in and we lengthen, or we extend on the inhale, and on the exhale, we deepen. And that's how I run any single class, right? You back out of the intensity, right? Like let's pretend we're doing a hamstring stretch and we're laying on our back and we have a strap around the ball of our foot and our one leg is perpendicular up in the air. I always say you get yourself to that point of resistance, of discomfort, but not pain. And then that's when you exhale, and then you inhale and you release and come out of it. Then you exhale. And as you go back and forth slowly, we're not talking like really quickly, but really long, slow, deep breaths, you're able to bring that resistance point closer and closer to the body. That's what I find when I'm teaching something like that. But I also think that it's super important, especially with your background in meditation, I've talked about this quite a bit, is the visualization of the breath. So you're talking about that where the breath goes, the energy flows. And if you're thinking about, let's say your kidneys, you're breathing into your lower back. And so do you visualize the air in your back? Do you visualize your back? Like, what is your visualization point? Like, so how are you watching the breath flow through your lungs? Are you breathing? Sometimes I'll have someone literally if they're not adept at this, I'll say, put your hand where you are experiencing whatever discomfort and breathe into your hand. And it gives the body like the proprioception, the kind of kinetic connection between the mind, the breath, and where they're sending the breath. Because if someone doesn't practice yoga and you tell them to breathe into their left big toe, they're going to look at you like you have 45 heads. Like, right. That's just right. That's okay. I've had it happen. I do not have 45 heads, but I've had it happen. If you're new to this kind of practice.
Yeah. And, when I started yoga, I remember a teacher saying, breathe into your heart. And I'm like, or visualize that. So I get it. It's like, oh, okay, I had to work on that visualization. That one should be pretty easy. But yeah, that's a really good point, to place your hand on an area that you want relief in, and breathe into it. Yeah, I love that. But yeah, I think the breathing is also of course, brings you back to the mindfulness of just the connection between your body and mind. So always kind of, because I've been working on understanding kind of embodied wisdom and trying to tap that in myself. And friends that have done Yin Yoga with me before, helping them tap that. I think that it's, oh gosh, I just lost my train of thought.
So we were just talking about the breath connection and the visualization of the breath and being able to help people tap into that idea of how to get them, like you said, embodied wisdom, how to get them from their head into their body, and maybe using the breath as a facilitator for that.
Yes, thank you. That is exactly my point. It really has helped. Like all those interfaces, there's so many interfaces between your mind and your body. And so that exploration of like with the breathing, with kind of going in, just kind of laying down and just going, wow, my shoulder is tight or my lower back hurts. It's just like, okay, so think about why that is, because it's probably attached to some emotional thing or maybe a mental thing or too much work or something. So yeah, I find it really interesting to find those interfaces between the body and the mind. And I think the Yin Yoga has helped me create this space just in my life to do that. But also, the space within the areas that you're working on your chi flow, there is space. It's not just all, it's getting space between things. I love the concept of spaciousness in so many ways, in your body, in your mind.
Yeah,
you can change your perception in a minute when I say just be spacious, or spaciousness. Don't be so, that's another thing, like soften.
Yeah.
The S words.
Absolutely. Yeah. The S word, space and softness, 100%. So of course, we are flying through our time together, I'm sure. And I'm so grateful to have you here with me and to be sharing space with you. I have one final question for you, if you'll allow me. And that is, do you have a favorite yin asana, yin pose? Or any yoga pose, but what is your favorite, and would you give us a couple cues or prompts to help us melt into it? Because I feel like yin is a very melty practice. Again, the air quotes for those of you who are not watching this.
Yeah. Well, I'll have to come back once again to the butterfly pose would probably be my favorite. And I've been working on using that as kind of a gauge as to my progress, like how far I can get into the pose. But I would say two that are so super simple and that just get me to the mat. A forward fold. You can do a standing forward fold and stay there for a long time and let that back release, and let your arms fall out of the socket, and or kind of space in those joints that are tight, space in that back. And so it's hard to hold that one for a 5-minute period, but I can do that for 2 to 3 minutes, and that just kind of starts me off. I'll do kind of roll myself up, stack my spine in coins to kind of get myself up after about 2 minutes, and then allow myself to flop back down for another bit of time. But I just find that so juicy, and it's a standing position. So, here we were talking about yin positions on the floor, but holding that position for a long time does help me kind of relax and get the, I can just kind of hear the cracks in the spine, and kind of the joints kind of loosening up while I do that, and it brings me into kind of going a little further with things.
Yeah, and forward folds are huge. They're relatively safe inversions as long as you don't have like a lot of high blood pressure, like eye problems. That like they're very generally safe. And if you're not practicing a downward facing dog, or you're not practicing headstand, handstand, going upside down, like that inversion, that release of the spine, that anti-gravity for the neck, for the traction that it creates, and the synovial fluid release that it's kind of, and all of that crunching, all of that kind of like the opposite of the heart, not the harmonic, the accordion, right? Like the opposite compression of the spine, right? And you can always, like, one of my favorite things to do, and all of my horsey students, or all of my, people that, beat their bodies up on a daily basis, is I have them, and even my like some elderly clients that I work with, I'll have them bend their knees and put their hips up on the wall, and lay their belly on their thighs. So they're still in the forward fold position, but they're supported, and then they can hold it, right, for an exceptionally long period of time. Sometimes removing the balance aspect out of it can actually, bring support into the deepening for people that may not be at as high a level in an instructor practice. Like, holding and balancing in a forward fold for 5 minutes, that is challenging. Like, I can imagine how challenging that would be, right? But if you are trying to practice this potentially at home, maybe you could be able to just lay your hips up on the wall, bend your knees, lay your belly on your thighs, let that head. You'll still get all of that decompression. You'll still get all of those awesome health benefits. And you probably won't, potentially topple over for longer than you intended to be, right?
Right. And another great way to do that is to sit on the floor and, do a forward bend.
Yep, seated forward
back
fold.
straight, and then yes.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you brought up gravity, because that is really a key energy force for Yin Yoga. You're letting gravity, you're working with the gravity, which is a little bit different from Yang. You might be working against gravity a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
So gravity is really important to just feel where your body is touching the ground and where that gravity is pulling you into our beautiful Mother Earth. But I also wanted to just add that above all, kind of like Yin should be combined with Yang, and it's about like, what does your body need right now? If you need kind of cooling and rest and quiet, and Yin is great. If you need to face your day and you need some energy, Yang would be the better, but a little both. Maybe some people start with the Yang and then do a little Yin at the end of a practice, or maybe some people do a Yang practice in the morning and then the Yin practice in the evening. So there's different ways to do it, but with just all about balancing chi, you don't want to go overboard on one or the other, because we don't want to, have the negative effects of too much Yin or too much Yang.
Right. And, again, yoga is all about balance. And I think no matter what practice you're in, and I bet you'll agree with me on this one, all you have to do is listen to your body. In Yin Yoga, in Hatha Yoga, and Vinyasa Yoga, and in Ashtanga, and any yoga practice at life, right? It's that opening that present. It's listening your body. It's creating the connection to realize that your body is speaking to you, because that's the first step in any yoga practice, is that, oh, wait, my body can actually communicate with me. Who knew?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, so yoga for me was like the gateway drug to realizing that my body had a voice, right? Like, as people, we don't think that it's the same. Like, our head is the voice and our body just it's the car, it gets us from point A to point B. But your body has a voice. It has intuition. I talked a lot recently about your heart space and listening to your heart. Essentially, that's listening to your body, right? Like, your body knows before your brain. Your brain is generally what gets you into trouble. The overthinking, the negative self-talk, that Yang, the brain just goes, it spirals, it goes a mile a minute. But the body, and what I loved what you said was about Yin being on the floor. And, I talked a lot about grounding, and I feel like Yin is a very grounding practice. So, a lot of times, even with women, if they're still in their menstrual cycles or they're coming towards the end of it, different times of the month, different moon phases, even you might be exhausted. You might get to your mat in the morning and you might be the last thing you need. Even if you're like, I need energy, the last thing your body will tell you, I don't want to do a sun salute. I want to lay on the floor. Mm-hmm. I had an episode of this podcast called lay Down Harder, right? So it's like, I don't want to do that. And you just listen to your body. And that, to me, if we leave nothing else, with the people that are listening to this. Listen, your body has a voice, listen to it at life and drop out of your head, drop into your body. And it sounds like Yin Yoga is like the move for getting out of your head and into your body, because I don't think there's much more than holding a posture for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes that will get you into your body faster.
Yeah.
or
and
more
you
effectively.
Right. And then you notice the mind, I don't like this. I want to go have a snack or whatever. But so it is a practice. But exactly what you said. That was a great summary there for sure.
Yeah, I just had this vision of like the body being the mother and the mind being the child. And the child being like, I don't wanna, right? And the body being like, nope, it's okay. We're gonna be here. It's gonna be fine. And I think that, I don't know why that just flew into my mind, but I thought you might get a chuckle out of it, just especially in a yin practice where your body wants to go have a snack, like have some grapes, and your body's like, nope, we're gonna breathe into it. We're gonna settle in. We're gonna let this happen. And I think that's awesome. And I just want to thank you so much, Ann, for spending this time with me. I had a wonderful time. This was the highlight of my day, I promise you. And I hope that you enjoyed being here.
Oh yes, thank you so much for asking me and just introducing me to the network and everything. Appreciate this work so much. Thank you, Gia.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. And is there any way that you'd like for any of our listeners to be able to connect with you? Please feel free to share any way that they might be able to, you help them or further this discussion with them or anything else?
Yeah, I'm not super active on social media with my yoga practice, but if anybody is interested in doing Yin Yoga, learning more about it through Zoom, you can email me at Ann Scheerer, ANNSCHEERER @gmail.com. And Ann Scheerer, I'm also on LinkedIn, my professional site. Get a hold of me there. But thank you. I am continuing to practice and wanting to put this more out in the world. So I appreciate this opportunity to share.
Well, it's been my pleasure again, and I'm so grateful to have you here today, and for me to learn so much about Yin Yoga, which I will be completely honest is not where my practice had taken me. So I love that you and I brought balance here today between the Yin and the Yang. So thank you again for being here with me.
Thank you.
I would it's truly an honor and a pleasure, Ann. Truly an honor and a pleasure. And on that note, I just want to say that I appreciate each and every one of the wonderful people listening to us today. Thank you for sharing your space with us. And please feel free to share this and the same with your loved ones. For more goodness, please follow me on all the socials at Above the Ground Podcast or visit my website, airsaboveyoga.com. And as always, definitely check out the other episodes and all of my amazing sisters at divasthatcare.com. Find us all on SoundCloud, Spotify, Odyssey, Apple, and anywhere else you feel guided. Again, my name is Gia-Raquel Rose, owner of Airs Above Yoga, and you are listening to Above the Ground Podcast, where every day is a good one.
Thanks for listening. This show was brought to you by Divas That Care. Connect with us on Facebook, on Instagram, and of course on divasthatcare.com, where you can subscribe to our newsletter so you don't miss a thing.